Let us begin with a unique story. It is a very old story that there was a king who had 4 sons. He had instructed them to guard his kingdom day and night and see that no one in his kingdom is unhappy or needs anything. There is no need for it. One morning, while the eldest prince was on guard, he met a yogi. The yogi was sitting on the bank of a pond, and 4 horses were grazing near him. He saw that there were as many horses as his father had. They were of a different breed from the ones who were with the prince and were better than them too, so he went to the yogi and asked him, "Oh yogi, who are you and when did you come here? What do you want here?" The yogi said, "I want you," the prince asked in surprise. Because I am the eldest son of the king of this country. My father has asked me to take care of this country. I should see if anyone needs anything. So you tell me if you need anything." The yogi again replied the same way. "I only want you and nothing else, but if you need anything you tell me and I will get it for you." The prince said, "Oh yogi, I am yours. I want to ride on one of the best horses." The yogi said, "Okay, you can take any one of the horses for your ride, but keep in mind that you bring it back here before evening. I am expecting you to come here, that I will definitely listen to your experiences about your whole day's ride." The prince chose a horse and rode on it and went away. As soon as the prince sat on the horse started running very fast, and it reached a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. He was going towards the forest, and he stopped near a vegetable garden. There was such a flood all around that garden that no one could enter it. The prince went some distance towards the forest, and then started returning from there. When he returned, while he was doing this, he saw that all the sticks in the fence of the vegetable garden had turned into sickles and were cutting vegetables from the garden. He was very surprised to see this, but he could not understand the reason why this happened. He walked away from there. He came to the yogi. The yogi asked him how was his horse ride and what did he see on the way. The prince said, "I saw a garden around which there was a flood. There was a wall in which it was impossible to go inside. I went a little further, and then when I came back, I saw that the same bamboo sticks were being turned into sickles, and people were cutting vegetables from that garden." The yogi asked, "Do you know what this means?" The prince said, "No, I don't know." The yogi said, "I don't know, and your father has asked you to take care of this kingdom. Go and turn into stone." As soon as the yogi said this, the prince turned into stone. The next morning, the king's second son went to take care of the city. He too went out and reached the same yogi. He too saw the yogi's fine horses. He too became very happy on seeing those fine horses. He too stopped near the yogi and asked him who he was and where he had come from. The yogi said, "I have been roaming here in this country for a few days. These 4 horses are mine. Would you like to ride one of these horses?" Yesterday, the king's eldest son came here. He wanted to ride one of these horses. I offered him any horse. I allowed him to choose and ride him. But when he came back after riding, I could not understand the meaning of what he had seen on the way. If I could, I turned him into stone. The prince said, "Okay, but what did he see that he could not explain to you?" Then the yogi told him what he had seen and promised that if he could make him understand that the sticks were not stones, if he had changed into me, then he would bring his brother back to life. The prince said, "Yogi, you have asked a very difficult question. When I have not even seen the person about whom you are asking me, then how can I explain him to you? Yes, if I take one of your beautiful horses and see it, then perhaps I can make you understand." The yogi gave him permission, and he went away from there taking a horse. That horse also took him to a forest, where he saw a newly born calf. The prince told him that he had seen a newly born calf feeding milk to its mother. He kept watching this strange incident for a long time and then returned to the yogi. The yogi asked him, "What did you see on the way?" The yogi asked him, "Can you tell me what this means?" The prince said, "I do." And no. The yogi said, "Don't you know?" The prince answered his question. He could not give it, because before that he had already turned into stone. On the third morning, the third prince went out to look after the city, and he also came to the yogi. He also saw his horses. He was also surprised to see his horses. He asked him who he was. Ignoring his questions, Joe asked him to sit next to her, and in the course of their conversation she found out that he too was a prince and had set out in search of his two elder brothers. He told her what had happened to her two elder brothers and later said that he would bring her two brothers back to life if she could tell him why the fence posts had turned into lances and new ones were born. Why was the calf feeding milk to its mother? The prince said, "Thank you very much. If you give me one of your horses, I can go and see these strange things, and then perhaps I can explain them to you." The yogi said, Yes, why not? You can learn any of these. Take the horse, but remember to return here before evening." The prince took one of those horses and rode on it and went away. That horse also took him towards the forest. He took him to a place where he saw a man carrying a load of wood on his back. He was not satisfied with the wood he had collected, but was picking up more wood lying on the way. The prince wondered what this meant. "When I reach the yogi, I will tell him what this means." Unfortunately, this prince too failed to understand the meaning of this incident, and the yogi turned him into stone too. The next morning, the king's fourth and last son went to look after the city, and when he went out to look for his brothers, he came to the yogi. He bowed to the yogi and asked him if he had seen his three brothers. The yogi said, "Yes, I have seen them." Pointing in one direction, he said to him, "Look at these three brothers are standing here. I have turned them into stones because they could not explain to me what they had seen in the nearby forest. But I can bring them back to life if you explain the meaning of all this to me." After this, he turned them into stones. The three princes narrated to him the events they had witnessed. The prince said, "If you give me one of your horses to ride, then perhaps I can ride on his horse. I want to tell them what it means. I want to go to that forest myself and see them." The yogi gave him permission, and the prince took one of those horses and headed towards the forest. When he reached the forest, he saw a pond from which water was flowing. He went out and was filling other ponds. At that time, the big pond was empty because all its water was used to fill those small ponds. In the evening, when he returned to the yogi asked him the same question which he had asked his three elder brothers. The prince too was unable to answer the yogi's question, and the yogi turned him into stone. The king came to know that for several days, one of his four sons was missing. There was no trace of anyone, so he suspected that some trouble must have befallen his sons. Now he himself set out to look for them. While searching, he also came to the yogi. He also asked the yogi, "Jogji, have you found any clue about my sons? Have you seen your son somewhere?" The yogi pointed towards four stone pillars standing on one side. The king was shocked to see this. It came out from his mouth, "That do you mean that they have turned into stones?" The yogi said, "Yes, that is it. I have turned them into stones because they could not explain to me the meaning of some of the incidents they saw in the forest. Still, I have brought them back to life. I can, if you explain their meaning to me. If you like, you can take one of my horses and go to the forest." The king said, "No, thanks, there is no need for that, but if you can tell me what they saw that they could not explain to you, so maybe I can try to make them understand you." Then the yogi said, "Rajan, your eldest son, saw a vegetable garden in the forest, around which there was such a flood that it was impossible to cross it and go inside. But when he returned from there, he saw that the sticks of that flood were turning into yokes and cutting the vegetables of that garden. What does it mean? The king said that this is the picture of a man who has kept some money with him for safety, and when the owner of that money came to ask for his money back from him, if so, that person has either hidden the money somewhere or has spent it, so that the owner of the money cannot get it back. As soon as the king completed his sentence, his elder son stood in front of him. The yogi asked his second question. What does it mean if your second son saw a newly born calf feeding milk to its mother? The king said, it is very strange. It is true that after seeing this, he did not remember a single woman who was living on her daughter's earnings. As soon as the king said this, his second son also came alive and stood in front of him. Then the yogi asked his third question. Rajan, what is your third son? The son saw a man carrying wood on his back. He was not satisfied with the pile and was also picking up other woods that he found on the way. What does this mean? The king said, this tells us that there are some people who are not satisfied with whatever they have. They always want more. As soon as the king said these words, his third son also came alive and appeared before him. The yogi now stood up and asked his fourth and last question. Rajan, your youngest son saw a pond in the forest which gave water to 6 other ponds. What does it mean that you have emptied it? The king said to the yogiji, that big pond is like those people in the world who spend everything they have to give to others. But what do they get in return? Nothing. As soon as the king saw this pond, he said that his fourth son also came alive and stood in front of him. The king and his 4 sons returned happily to their palace. After some time, the king left his throne and gave his kingdom to his children, and he himself went to live peacefully in the forest. Went